G'day, I'm Adam Chalmers. I'm a software engineer at Zoo.dev and I work on KCL, the KiDi language. This is a programming language for 3D design, so it's a programming language for doing CAD. In previous episodes, we've covered the basics of KCL. We've looked at how to do a 2D sketch. We've looked at how to make that 2D sketch into a 3D solid. And we've looked at some things you can do with 3D solids, like transforming them, rotating them, stretching them, moving them around, giving them different appearances. In this episode, we're going to look at sketching on the faces of those 3D solids. So let's just dive right in, hey? You can see over here I've made a cube. I've made a cube by starting a sketch and then choosing where to start the pen at 0, 0. And we've then made 4 lines, and we've closed the cube, and then we extruded it into the third dimension to make a proper cube. So just to recap real quick, one of the nice things about KCL is if you click on a line of the code, it visualizes that line in the real-time video feed. So you can see I'm clicking through, and the edges are getting highlighted in yellow. And if I do the other way around, if I click on an edge, it'll highlight the line of code that corresponds to it. So that makes it easy to figure out what your code is actually doing. Now, you can also tag these lines when you sketch them. So let's just tag, you can see we've tagged one of these lines here as tag number C. We can tag many faces, so this one's tagged as C, and let's tag this one here as A. Tag equals $A. The dollar sign means you're declaring a tag. D is for dollar, and D is also for declare. That's how I remember it. So when you extrude a flat sketch, like a square, into a three-dimensional solid, like a cube, the tags that correspond to lines also correspond to those faces. So this tag line over here that's tagged A, when you extrude, you're kind of pulling this line up into the third dimension. You're making a face from it. So this face here is also tagged A. You can see if we click on the face, it shows both the original line that created it and the extrude call that made it into a face. So it's easy to tell what your code is doing. So we can actually sketch on this face. You can see we've assigned the solid to a variable. The variable is called myCube. Let's use it. We can do start sketch on, just like above, we started the sketch on XZ, but we're not going to start it on XZ this time. We're going to start it on myCube. And specifically, we're going to start it on the face that is tagged A. Now note there's no dollar sign here because we're not declaring a new tag. We're using an existing tag. So if you try to use $A here, you're going to get a little error that'll explain you can't redefine A because it thinks you're trying to declare A again. So now that we've started a sketch there, we can then start sketching again. We can say start profile at the origin. Oh yeah, let me remove that little error now that I've demonstrated it. And you can see it put a little point here. Now, see that point here? That corresponds to the global origin of 0, 0. That's because when you start a profile that's sketched on a face, it still uses the overall global coordinate system. So it's not you're not starting it at somewhere relative to the center of this face. You're starting it in the same global scene origin. So I'm going to move this point a little bit. I'm going to move it. You can see that it's highlighted in yellow. It's a bit hard to see, but if I tilt the camera around, it becomes a bit easier. So let's move it a little bit. Let's move it down. Let's move it down 5. Oh, that's too far. Let's move it this way 5. It can be a bit hard. It can be a bit easy to get confused with the camera to figure out which planes you're on. So a little bit of experimentation is okay. So we've now started a new profile somewhere. We can then keep adding lines to that and make a whole new shape. So let's do X line of length 1 and a Y line of length 1. And then let's close our sketch. So you can see we've sketched a new triangle on this face. And this can then be extruded as well. Oh, the call is extrude, not extruded. And yeah, you can see we've now successfully sketched on this face. Awesome. Now, of course, we can make this a little bit bigger, just to demonstrate the next thing I want to do. Let's make this 2 wide each. There we go. Now, this created some new geometry, and that new geometry has several faces. right? It's got this face here. We can sketch on this face too, just as easily. We can tag this one. Let's tag it face of triangle, and we can start another sketch. We can start sketch on, let's name this triangle, start sketch on triangle, face equals face of triangle. Oh, again, made the same mistake where I declared the tag again. Okay, and that worked out just fine. So we're going to change that back. We're going to, I guess, start another profile. And you can see we started a new profile here, and we could easily then, make another shape here. We could do a circle where the center is at 4, 4, the radius is 1, and then look, we've got a new circle coming out of there. And then we can even, keep extruding that. Make a cylinder coming out of here. And then we can sketch on this face if we wanted to. And so on and so forth. So sketch on face lets you make really complicated designs, which is it's a very powerful tool. So the tag system is really powerful in KCL. It lets you reference the edges that have been created in your 3D geometry. But now, when we wanted to tag these, we tagged this line as A, and we tagged this line as C, which means we can sketch on these two side faces here. Let me remove these so we kind of make it simple again. We sketched on this face because we tagged as A. We sketched on this, we can sketch on this face, which is tagged C. What about this face? This is actually the original square that we sketched. If we remove these two lines, you can see it again. It's this original sketch we did. There's no single line call that corresponds to that face, so how do we tag it? There's no line to tag. Well, we've got some built-in tags for different geometry. So we can do start sketch on my cube, and the face is that starting face, the original face that we sketched on. So from there, we can do a circle. The radius is way too big. Let's shrink that down a little bit. Cool. Nice, we can adjust that to bring it into the right place. It's still not quite right. Cool. So that's how you tag. That's how you sketch on a face that wasn't created by extruding. Didn't correspond to a single tagged edge. And then of course there's also an end that you can tag. You can do something like, to get the opposite face, you can do just the opposite face over here. So I'm not going to bother adjusting the geometry, but you can see here this circle is being sketched on the end face. This circle here is being sketched on the starting face. The last kind of thing you can do to sketch on face is, do you remember chamfers in the previous video? If you didn't watch it, that's okay. I'm going to show you again. We can do a chamfer, which is cutting away at an edge. Let's do a chamfer of length 2 on the A tag. So that's just cut away this face here that corresponds to tag A. We're saying take this line that corresponds, this edge, tagged A, and cut it away to make it duller or blunter. We're going to cut it away with a length of 2. Well, we can sketch on this face as well. I just created a new face, so we can sketch on it. Let's call this face my chamfer. And then we can start sketching on it. We can do start sketch on my cube, face equals my chamfer. And we can sketch on that face just as easily as anything else. Oh, I keep making this mistake. There we go. Cool. We can just move this across a little bit. And we can extrude that. All right, so you've seen that we can tag individual edges, and then when you extrude them, the faces also share that tag. For faces that don't correspond to a single edge, like the start and the end of the sketch or the extrusion, you can just use the built-in start and end identifiers. And if you chamfer away at a face, chamfer away at an edge, it makes a new face, which can also be tagged, and you can sketch on that too. When you've sketched on a face, you then create a bunch of other faces if you extrude it, and even those faces can be tagged. So you can keep this process on and on and on. So the kind of sketch process is that you create a single face, you extrude that up, which creates many more faces, and each of those can be sketched on to create more faces. You can sketch on them, and so you can build up these complicated models with a lot of geometry. The tag system is really flexible and powerful. We're going to be looking at more uses for tags later on, but until next time, I hope this was useful. Thanks very much for watching.